At my father's funeral, my picture-perfect sister smirked at me, basking in the glow of her latest triumph, marrying the man I once called mine. But just as she opened her mouth to gloat, something unexpected happened. The funeral director dimmed the lights, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "Evelyn has prepared a special tribute to her father." Vivian's smirk faltered. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My mother's eyes widened as the screen flickered to life. The next morning, I woke to 73 missed calls from my mother. Growing up, I was invisible. Not in the eerie supernatural sense, but in the way that cut deepest. Vivian, my younger sister, was the golden child. The Instagram-perfect daughter who lit up every room with her $1,000,000 smile. And me? I was the background blur in her carefully curated life. Ever present in family photos, yet somehow always out of focus. I still remember the day when I was 12 and she was 10. My digital art piece had just won first place in the International Youth Digital Arts Competition. Kids from 30 countries had submitted their work, and mine had been chosen. I was bursting to share the news, my tablet clutched in sweaty palms, the winner's certificate glowing on the screen. But that same afternoon, Vivian had landed a small modeling gig for a local children's clothing store. Nothing major, just a few photos for their website. Yet you'd think she'd been signed by Vogue from the way my parents reacted. They gathered around her like she was a precious jewel, cameras flashing, voices bubbling with excitement. "Our little supermodel," Dad exclaimed, lifting her onto his shoulders. "You're going to be famous, sweetheart." Mom gushed, already posting photos on social media. I stood in the doorway, tablet still in hand, watching them celebrate. My throat felt tight, like someone was squeezing it shut. Finally, I cleared my throat. "Mom, Dad, I won the international art competition." Mom glanced over, distracted. "That's nice, honey," she said. Nice. 30 countries, thousands of submissions, and my victory was just nice. But look at Vivian's photos. Mom continued, showing her phone to relatives who had gathered. "Isn't she absolutely gorgeous?" she said to everyone. Dad nodded without even looking my way. "Art's a nice hobby, Evelyn, but Vivian's got real potential here." "Real potential," he said, as if my international recognition meant nothing. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor, staring at my winning piece on the tablet screen. The colors seemed duller now, the creativity somehow less meaningful. Downstairs, I could hear Vivian practicing poses in front of the mirror. Mom's voice carried up the stairs, coaching her on angles and expressions. "Perfect, darling. You're a natural," she said. I pressed my face into my pillow, but the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. It never did. Years passed and in my mid-20s, I found something that finally felt like mine. Brandon, my first real boyfriend. He had this confident, infectious energy. The kind that made you believe anything was possible when he was around. When he looked at me, I felt valued. Actually valued. Or so I thought. Brandon wasn't perfect. He had big dreams but little follow-through, spent too much time on social media, and sometimes disappeared into his startup fantasies for days. But he saw my art. He understood my vision. Or at least I thought he did. So I invited him to my gallery opening, hoping just this once, my parents would see what I had accomplished. The converted warehouse space hummed with conversation and clinking wine glasses. My digital installations cast colorful shadows on exposed brick walls. Art collectors and critics mingled, discussing the interactive pieces I'd spent months perfecting. Vivian arrived fashionably late, her designer dress catching every light in the room. Her smile was camera-ready, already posing for selfies near my artwork. Brandon was beside me, his hand warm on my back, steadying me as we moved through the crowd. Maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. Maybe I wouldn't be overshadowed. But Vivian had other plans. She positioned herself strategically next to my centerpiece installation, her phone already out. "Brandon, you simply must take photos of me with this piece," she called out, her voice carrying across the room. "It's so interesting." I watched her work her magic. The way she angled her body, how her eyes sparkled as she looked directly at him through her phone screen. My stomach dropped. I recognized that look. I'd seen it in countless Instagram stories and TikTok videos. Vivian was performing, and Brandon was her audience. She tilted her head just so, her laugh musical and perfectly timed. She was creating content, and he was becoming part of her narrative. "Vivian, what are you doing?" I whispered, moving closer to them. She glanced at me over her phone, her expression innocent. "Just documenting your lovely work, Evelyn." "Don't be so paranoid," she sighed. "Mom, Dad, Vivian's using my opening as a photo shoot," I said, my voice tight with frustration. Mom looked around at the sophisticated crowd, clearly impressed. "Oh, Evelyn, don't be jealous. Vivian's helping promote your work. Look how many people are noticing because of her," she said. She gestured to the small crowd that had gathered to watch Vivian pose. Dad nodded approvingly. "Smart girl, that Vivian. She knows how to market things," he said. Neither of them mentioned my art, my achievement, or the fact that this was supposed to be my night. Brandon left me on a Thursday. A humid Thursday when the air conditioning had broken and everything felt suffocating. He sat on my couch, scrolling through his phone, thumb pausing on Vivian's latest post. "Evelyn, we need to talk," his voice was carefully measured. The tone people use when they've rehearsed their exit speech. "It's Vivian. She gets it," he said. "Gets what?" I asked, though I already knew I didn't want the answer. "The whole influencer thing, the business potential. She could really help my startup get visibility," he said. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything vital. But I kept my voice steady. "So this is about your business?" I asked. He finally looked up from his phone, guilt flickering across his face. "It's not just that. She's exciting, you know? Always doing something, always connected," he said. I stared at this man who had once called my art profound, who had spent hours listening to me explain my creative process. "You're choosing her?" I asked. The words felt like glass in my throat. He nodded, then held up his phone. "Look, she's already tagged me in 3 posts today. That's the kind of exposure my company needs," he said. And there it was. Not love, not passion, but social media metrics. He stood up, grabbing his jacket from my chair. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. But you have to understand, this could change everything for me," he said. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I sat in my empty studio apartment, surrounded by half-finished digital art projects. The silence pressed against my eardrums. Outside, traffic hummed and sirens wailed, but inside, everything was still. My phone buzzed. A notification. Vivian had posted a story, "Dinner with my new favorite entrepreneur." I turned off my phone and stared at my reflection in the black screen. That night, I drove to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The porch light was on, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. I could see them through the living room window, watching TV like nothing had changed. I walked in without knocking. "Brandon left me for Vivian," I announced, my voice cutting through the laugh track of their sitcom. Mom looked up from her tablet, where she'd been scrolling through social media. "Oh, honey," she said, not looking particularly surprised. "These things happen. Vivian didn't steal him. He made his own choice. Besides, they make such a cute couple online," she said. Dad glanced over his reading glasses. "Maybe this is good for you, Evelyn. Focus on your art instead of boys," he said. That's when I understood. They would never see it. Never see how their golden child had systematically dismantled every relationship, every achievement, every moment of happiness I'd tried to build. The house felt like a museum of my childhood disappointments. Every family photo on the mantel featured Vivian prominently, while I appeared as an afterthought in the background. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a notepad from the counter. My hand shook as I wrote, "I'm done pretending we're a family. Don't contact me." I left it on the kitchen table and walked out into the night. The drive to the city was a blur of streetlights cutting through darkness, my old Honda's engine humming a steady rhythm as I left everything behind. My new loft apartment was modest, tucked above a vintage bookstore in the arts district. The exposed brick walls were scarred with nail holes from previous tenants, and the heating was temperamental. But it was mine. I found work at a small design agency, crafting graphics for local businesses. The pay was decent, the coffee was strong, and for the first time in years, I could focus on creating without someone dismissing my work as just a hobby. I was free. I started therapy with Dr. Helena. My therapist had a voice like calm water. Steady, clear, reassuring. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe without permission. "Evelyn," she said one day, her tone gentle but direct. "You're not invisible. You're just finally learning to see yourself clearly," she said. I wanted to believe her. At first, I fought against it, but I kept coming back. We talked about Mom, about Dad, about Vivian, about the emotional cage I had lived in for so long that I hadn't even realized the bars were made of other people's expectations. "You're allowed to be angry," Dr. Helena told me, her gaze steady and encouraging. "You're allowed to feel everything." And I did. I felt the rage, the grief, the betrayal, but also something unexpected. Something that felt like possibility. One night, I opened my laptop and started a new project. My hands moved across the keyboard, creating, building, designing. I aimed my webcam at the city skyline, the lights twinkling like digital stars against the darkness. The footage was raw, unpolished, but authentic. I began creating interactive video installations. Pieces that responded to movement, to sound, to the viewer's presence. The cracks in the sidewalk became metaphors for resilience. Stray cats in alleyways became symbols of independence. The neon signs from the businesses below became a language of urban poetry. Each creation felt like reclaiming lost pieces of myself. Fragments I had abandoned in the shadow of Vivian's Instagram perfect life. I had no idea then, but this work would change everything. Meanwhile, Vivian was marrying Brandon. I saw the announcement on every social media platform. Her in designer white, beaming for the cameras, Mom and Dad positioned perfectly beside her like accessories in her content creation. The venue was a trendy rooftop garden, every detail optimized for maximum Instagram impact. Hashtags flooded my feed. Hashtag Vivian says yes, hashtag Brandon and Vivian, hashtag perfect couple. A familiar hollow ache settled in my chest. But I didn't react. I didn't comment. I didn't even watch her stories. My thumb hovered over the unfollow button before I finally pressed it. I was done being a spectator in her performance. Vivian might have won this round, but I was done keeping score. The ache was still there. It probably always would be, but I understood something now. This wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. The storm had passed, but I was still standing. I had learned to create again, and this time it was entirely my own. The city was electric, subway trains rumbling beneath my feet, conversations in 12 different languages mixing in the air. But amidst the chaos, I felt centered. Like I was finally exactly where I belonged. I balanced freelance design work with evening classes in interactive media. Exhaustion was a constant companion, my laptop bag heavy with tutorials and software manuals. The classrooms smelled of coffee and ambition. The computer labs hummed with creativity late into the night. Every project, every breakthrough, was another step toward the person I was becoming. My professors challenged me, pushed me, saw potential I was just beginning to recognize. One evening after a particularly intensive workshop, Professor Martinez pulled me aside. Her expression was serious but encouraging. "Evelyn," she said, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "You have a unique vision. Don't let anyone convince you to water it down," she said. I nodded, feeling something shift inside my chest. For the first time in my life, I believed someone saw me clearly. And more importantly, I was starting to see myself. After graduation, I took the biggest leap of my life. I opened my own interactive media studio. It was small, barely more than 4 walls of exposed brick with industrial lighting and a door that squeaked every time someone entered. The rent was steep, but every square foot was mine to fill with creativity. Meanwhile, Vivian's life was everywhere I looked. Instagram stories of her and Brandon, their startup success story broadcast for millions to admire. Brand partnerships, sponsored posts, carefully staged moments of domestic bliss. Mom's voice on our weekly phone calls, practically vibrating with excitement. Vivian's doing incredibly well, she'd gush, her pride unmistakable. Did you see her latest collaboration with that skincare brand? And Brandon's app just got featured in TechCrunch, she said. I gripped the phone, that familiar twist in my stomach threatening to return. The same narrative, week after week. But something fundamental had changed. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was suffocating in her spotlight. I was creating my own. I wanted to interrupt, to say, what about my work? What about my studio? But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch, then gently ended the call. I turned back to my workstation, focusing on the project glowing on my screens. Light and shadow dancing in digital harmony. Broken fragments becoming something beautiful and new. At sunrise, I captured the city's awakening through my camera lens. The coffee shop below my studio coming to life, steam rising from espresso machines as early commuters gathered. Each frame was a piece of my story. Another fragment of myself I was reclaiming. Kieran noticed the change. You're different when you create, he murmured one evening, watching me edit an interactive video piece. The glow of multiple monitors illuminating my focused expression. You're completely in your element, he said. I smiled, feeling something warm unfurl in my chest. I feel like myself, I admitted, and meant every word. But the past wasn't finished with me yet. It lingered like smoke, always present, never quite dissipating. Vivian's curated perfection flashed across my social feeds, her flawless smile and carefully orchestrated life moments. Mom's comments section overflowing with glowing praise still stung like small cuts. But I refused to let it derail me. I kept creating, kept building, kept breathing through it. One night, Kieran brought takeout to my studio. The city stretched out beyond my windows, lights twinkling like scattered diamonds against velvet darkness. The air carried the promise of change, electric and full of possibility. He kissed me slowly, deliberately. Like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. And for the first time in years, I felt it completely. A spark, warmth spreading through my chest, a future I could actually envision. I love you, he said, his voice unwavering and sure. My heart stopped, then hammered against my ribs. I love you too, I whispered back. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. But fear crept in around the edges, threading itself through my happiness. Fear of losing him, fear of becoming invisible again. I didn't know it then, but I was about to step fully into the light. While Vivian's carefully constructed world was about to crumble. I told myself I didn't care what happened to her. But deep down, I knew I still did. Late one night, my phone buzzed. Maxine, my cousin. Her voice sounded strained. Evelyn, I need to tell you something, she said. Vivian's been posting about you, saying you abandoned the family for your art phase. I exhaled slowly, setting down my coffee mug. Let her, I said steadily. I'm done caring what she thinks. But Maxine wasn't finished. She's not okay, Evelyn. Her perfect life is falling apart, she said. My grip tightened on the phone. Brandon's startup failed, she continued. Completely crashed. He's bitter, drinks too much, blames everyone but himself, Maxine said. I listened, my chest constricting. And Vivian, Maxine hesitated. She's still Vivian, but worse. Desperate. Her followers are dropping, brand deals drying up. She's cruel now, Evelyn. She screams at service workers, treats mom like her personal assistant, she continued. I stayed quiet, absorbing the information. Vivian had taken everything from me, and now she was watching it crumble. It's like she's furious the world isn't handing her success anymore. I recognized this version of Vivian, who had always expected everything to be given to her. But now the spotlight was dimming. Mom and Dad were still in denial. They're completely delusional, Maxine said. They never really saw her, and they definitely never saw you, she said. The words hit me square in the chest. Not because they wounded me, but because they were true. The sadness I felt wasn't for Vivian. It was for the girl I used to be. And then it hit me. I wasn't that girl anymore. Maxine and I started talking regularly after that call. She carried her own scars. Her parents had always held Vivian up as the golden standard. "We're the forgotten ones," she said during coffee, her laugh bitter. It was heartbreaking. But it revealed something important. I wasn't fighting alone. For the first time, I had a true ally who understood. We met weekly at a cozy cafe that smelled of cinnamon and espresso. She told me about nursing, her travel dreams, her fears. "I want to break free too," she confessed. "But I'm terrified," she said. I covered her hand with mine. "You can do this," I said firmly. "You're braver than you realize," I said. Meanwhile, Vivian's world continued collapsing. Maxine updated me with fragments revealing more cracks. Brandon came home later and later, when he came home at all. "He's drinking heavily," Maxine reported. "And when sober, he's angry," she said. Vivian was hemorrhaging money. Designer shopping, expensive treatments, luxury vacations they couldn't afford. I could picture her still posing for photos, crafting perfect captions. But behind the lens, everything was cracking. The desperation, the slow dissolution. I told myself her downfall didn't matter to me. But that wasn't entirely true. Not because I cared about her, but because I cared about the girl I used to be. The one who had lost everything to Vivian's manipulation. The difference now? I was no longer the one losing. Kieran noticed before I even said a word. "You're quiet tonight," he murmured as our documentary flickered on screen. He shifted closer on the couch, his presence reassuring. "Maxine told me about Vivian," I admitted quietly. "Her whole world is imploding," I said. He nodded thoughtfully. "And how does that make you feel?" he assected. I considered the complexity of emotions swirling inside me. "I don't know," I said finally. "Angry, sad, relieved. Maybe all at once," I said. Kieran kissed my temples softly. "You don't have to feel anything specific," he murmured. "You don't owe her your emotional energy," he said. He was right. I didn't owe Vivian anything. But the past still lingered like a shadow. Her perfect smile, her constructed persona. Every time I glimpsed Mom's Instagram comments, still full of praise as if nothing had changed, it stung. But I refused to let it derail me. I kept creating, building my studio, pushing forward. Late at night, I worked on installations capturing the city after dark. Neon lights, dancing shadows, the pulse of urban life. Every project reclaimed another piece of my authentic self. I didn't realize then that I'd need that strength soon. My father was about to die, and everything was about to shift. The news crashed into me like a physical blow. Maxine called just after midnight, her voice shaking. "Evelyn," she said, words slicing through my studio's quiet. "Robert is gone," she said. I clutched the phone, knuckles white. "What do you mean gone?" I asked. "Heart attack. It happened this afternoon." "The funeral is this weekend," she said. I sat frozen, staring at my glowing computer screen. My hands trembled. The studio air felt heavy, pressing against my lungs. Grief, guilt, regret crashed over me. I hadn't seen Dad in over 3 years. Our relationship had been reduced to awkward holiday calls. And now he was gone forever. Kieran appeared beside me, taking my hand. "Should I go?" I asked, voice cracking. "To the funeral?" He studied my face carefully. "Not for them," he said quietly. "For you." "For closure," he said. I nodded, swallowing hard. I wasn't sure I was ready for what I'd face there. But I knew I had to go. Not to see them, but to say goodbye to Dad. And maybe, finally, to the girl I used to be. The drive to the funeral stretched endlessly ahead. Interstate 95 unwound like a ribbon I wasn't sure I was ready to follow. Storm clouds pressed down, matching my mood. Kieran drove with quiet focus, jazz playing softly on the radio. I watched familiar landmarks blur past, my mind racing. What would Mom say when she saw me? How would Vivian react? I thought about family gatherings where I'd been relegated to the kids' table as an adult. Art awards that never warranted a phone call. Sleepless nights wondering why I was fundamentally flawed. I thought about Brandon, about the rain-soaked night I'd driven away. And Dad, who had built a company from nothing but never learned to build a relationship with his eldest daughter. The familiar ache was still there, but something else had grown alongside it. Resilience. I wasn't that desperate girl anymore. I was complete on my own. The funeral home was stifling. The air hung thick with white lilies and burning candles. Mom sat in the front row, grief-stricken. Vivian beside her, perfectly composed in her designer black dress. I walked to the front of the room. "Excuse me," I said to the funeral director. "I'd like to share something," I said. The room fell silent. Brandon's face went ashen. Vivian's expression flickered with panic. A screen descended as I connected my laptop. "My father was a builder," I began, voice steady. "He understood strong foundations." The video began to play. A digital memorial weaving together home movies and recordings. But this wasn't Vivian's sanitized family version. This was the truth. Dad praising Vivian's photos while my art award sat unopened. Family conversations dismissing my achievements as hobbies. Birthday parties where Vivian got elaborate gifts while I got generic presents. The room watched in stunned silence. Vivian's composure cracked completely. Brandon shifted uncomfortably. Mom's hands trembled as she saw the truth. When it ended, I spoke to the camera. "Dad, I hope you can finally see me now." I looked at Vivian. "And I hope you understand what real consequences look like," I said. Kieran appeared at my side. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. I nodded, disconnecting my equipment. We walked toward the exit, leaving behind a room forced to face reality. I didn't look back. I had said everything that needed saying. The drive home felt different. The highway stretched ahead, but this time it felt like freedom. Kieran kept one hand on the wheel, the other on my knee. Classical music played softly, a soundtrack to my liberation. I stared out at the landscape, my thoughts clearer than they'd been in years. I thought about Mom, about Vivian, about the funeral that had become my final statement. I thought about the girl I'd been, always searching for validation from people incapable of giving it. And then I thought about the woman I'd become. Someone who had built a successful business, found genuine love, and learned self-worth. The old ache was still there, but it no longer controlled my life. I was finally free. My phone rang the next morning and continued all day. "Evelyn, please," Mom's voice cracked through the speaker. "I watched your video again. I'm so sorry. I was blind," she said. The phone felt heavy, weighted with decades of disappointment. I wanted to feel something dramatic, but all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying their baggage. "Ask Vivian for forgiveness," I said calmly. "She's the daughter you chose." And then I hung up. The phone kept buzzing, but I was done answering. Maxine called that evening, her voice cautious. "Evelyn," she said, her tone heavy. "It's really bad now," she said. I knew immediately that the aftermath had begun. Vivian and Brandon were falling apart. "Brandon's drinking heavily," Maxine continued. "Missing meetings, burning bridges. He comes home angry, if he comes home at all," she said. I could picture him in some dive bar, his startup dreams dissolved. "And Vivian?" I asked quietly. Maxine exhaled shakily. "She's in panic mode," she said. "Maxing out credit cards, booking treatments she can't afford. But her engagement is tanking. People are seeing through the act," she said. I listened, my chest tightening. "Your mom's finally starting to see it," Maxine said. "Vivian's too busy saving her reputation to visit. She's leaving Mom to handle Dad's affairs alone," she explained. Mom was experiencing the silence I had lived with for years. The same isolation, the same abandonment. I thought about those family dinners where I'd been background noise. The art competition dismissed as just computer stuff. The sleepless nights wondering why I was unworthy of love. And suddenly, I understood something profound. I owed them nothing. Not Vivian, not Mom, not any of them. I owed everything to myself. Kieran noticed my quiet mood that night. "You're processing something," he said, settling beside me on our couch. "What's going on?" he asked. I exhaled slowly, relaxing against his warmth. "Maxine told me about Vivian," I murmured. "Everything's collapsing for her, and Mom's finally seeing the truth," I said. He nodded thoughtfully. "How does that make you feel?" I searched for the answer beneath layers of old pain. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Relieved, maybe. Sad for the time I lost. Grateful for where I am now," I said. Kieran kissed the top of my head gently. "You don't have to feel anything specific," he said quietly. "You've already given them enough emotional energy," he said. For the first time in my life, I truly believed that. He was right. I didn't need to go back to that world. Instead, I launched my interactive media company that year. I called it Emerge, a platform for overlooked voices. The launch event was intimate but powerful. Me, Kieran, Maxine, and a room full of artists and storytellers who understood being unseen. Vivian's empire had crumbled. Her influence had evaporated. Her true character was finally visible. But I had built something real. I looked around at the people celebrating with me, at the meaningful work we were creating. I knew, without doubt, that I had always been enough. 5 years later, a letter arrived. The envelope was wrinkled, the handwriting shaky. I sat at my kitchen island, morning sunlight streaming through the windows. "Evelyn," it began, my name written like an apology. "I was wrong about everything. I chose Vivian and lost the daughter who really mattered. I'm sorry. Please forgive me," it said. I read it once, my throat tightening. I read it again, hands trembling slightly. I waited for anger, sadness, maybe satisfaction. But all I felt was exhaustion. I had carried their weight for too long. I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. Because forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. Sometimes it means releasing the weight you've been carrying. And that's exactly what I did. That evening, my latest interactive installation opened to the public. I stood in the gallery, surrounded by digital art pieces that responded to movement and touch. The air buzzed with conversation and connection. Kieran stood beside me, his hand in mine, pride evident in his smile. Maxine moved through the crowd, explaining pieces to visitors. These were my chosen family, the people who truly saw me. I paused in front of my centerpiece. A digital mirror that revealed childhood photos when viewers approached. An image appeared of myself at 10, holding a tablet displaying my award-winning artwork. I studied that quiet girl with hopeful eyes. "You're not invisible anymore," I whispered. I thought about my journey. The pain, the growth, the strength I'd discovered. I remembered Brandon's betrayal, the night I drove away from everything familiar. I thought of Vivian, of Mom, of the prison I'd finally escaped. I had stepped out of their shadows completely. I had created my own light. The gallery fell quiet, as if everyone sensed this moment's significance. Confidence and freedom coursed through me. I turned to Kieran, to Maxine, to the life I'd built from my own vision. I knew, without doubt, that I had always been enough. The storm had passed, and I had emerged transformed.